My younger brother, Leo, has always hated me. He was the golden child, the one our mom doted on, so it's not like he had any reason to be jealous. But he was. He was the star of our family, and I was just there. Mom made his meals, did his laundry, and even asked me to do his homework for him. She said it was my duty as a big brother. But she never did the same for me. I just accepted it. Maybe it was my fault for always giving him what he needed without asking for anything in return. He only came to me when he wanted something. I was a quiet kid, a bit of an introvert, and I liked to study. He was loud and rough, just like our dad. My parents' favoritism made Leo the center of attention. I didn't mind it when we were kids, but things got bad when he started bullying me for being different. He'd make fun of me for my height and my glasses. He'd sneak into my room, read my diary, and then tell my mom everything I wrote. When I got upset and told them he was invading my privacy, they just laughed it off. They said, "It's not a big deal, that's just how brothers bond." But it was a big deal. He did much worse things. He almost broke my glasses once. Another time he put small stones in my cereal and I almost broke my teeth. When I told my mom, she just shrugged and said, "Boys will be boys." He knew I was getting bullied by kids at school, but instead of helping me, he joined them. He called me names like ugly loser and hairy monkey and told them I was a failure. Another time, during a small argument, he told me to kill myself. I can brush off most insults, but that one really hurt. I was struggling with my mental health back then, and to hear that from my own brother was devastating. Since Dad was always at work and Mom didn't seem to care, she even scolded me, saying it was my fault for irritating him. Things got worse in high school. The worst incident was when Leo tried to set my hair on fire. I couldn't believe it. But what was even harder to believe was that my mom tried to defend him, saying he was just playing. Thankfully, Dad finally stepped in. He told Leo that if he didn't stop, he would call the police. That moment was a real shock for my brother, who had never faced any consequences for his actions. Dad made it clear that enough was enough, and that Leo needed to respect me. Later, Dad came to my room to talk. I never expected his support. He admitted that he had been waiting for Leo to grow up, but he was starting to see that his son was just a bully. I told him everything Leo had done to me over the years, and Dad was shocked at how much I had put up with. The next day, he went to the school and made sure the bullies left me alone. He then enrolled me in MMA classes, telling me I needed to learn to stand up for myself. The classes completely changed my life. The MMA classes completely changed my life, not just my physique. I became incredibly focused, managing my time to balance my studies and daily workouts. The constant fear of Leo's verbal attacks began to lift. I was a nerdy kid, but I was also determined, and the classes gave me a new sense of power and self-worth. One day, Leo was up to his old tricks again. We were given pocket money for helping with chores, and I had been saving mine for a while. Leo sneaked into my room and took it. I caught him just as he was about to ride off on his bike with his friends. I demanded he give me my money back, but he just laughed at me. He said all I could do was run to Dad for help, a jab at my new relationship with our father. I don't know what came over me, but something in me snapped. I punched him in the face. He was stunned, fell backward, and I quickly took my money back from his pocket before throwing him back down. Leo started crying loudly, which I admit was kind of funny to see. My mom, of course, rushed out to help him. When she found out I had fought him, she was shocked and immediately started scolding me, saying I should be a better role model for my brother. Leo, sitting there with a bruised ego and a bruised cheek, seemed to enjoy seeing me get scolded. But this time it was different. Mom also complained to Dad about my behavior. He came home, his face grim, and asked both of us to explain ourselves. I told him how Leo had stolen the money I had worked hard to earn. Leo tried to justify it, saying he needed the money for a date and that, as my brother, I should help him. Dad just looked at him with a cold expression. He told Leo he was lucky I only punched him for stealing, because anyone else would have called the police. He made it clear that Leo had no right to take other people's things without their consent. Leo didn't like that. He threw a tantrum, probably hoping Mom would side with him, but Dad remained firm. When Leo realized he wasn't going to be punished for getting hit, he screamed how much he hated me and ran back to his room, locking himself in. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were equals. He had finally understood that he couldn't bully me anymore, and that even Dad had stopped supporting his terrible behavior. Although he could no longer physically harm me, he still resorted to verbal insults when our parents weren't around. His behavior actually got worse with age, becoming angrier and more short-tempered each year. If I asked him a question, he would ignore me and walk away, muttering insults like nerd or loser under his breath. If he needed to communicate something to me, he would relay it through our mom instead of speaking to me directly. When I questioned her about why Leo couldn't just talk to me, she would just urge me to be more understanding. It was exhausting. I couldn't tell if it was just puberty or a genuine hatred that had grown into him. Over time, dealing with his comments became unbearable, and I longed to move out and get away from him for good. Eventually, I left for my dream university. I had earned a scholarship as a top student, and my dad even threw a party for me. My mom seemed proud, but Leo remained aloof and distant, barely acknowledging my achievements. The day I left was a mix of excitement for the future and a huge sense of relief to finally escape the toxic home environment. The first few months at university were liberating. I made new friends, enjoyed my classes, and started building a life separate from the constant fear of Leo's verbal attacks. For the first time in years, I had a sense of peace. During my second year, I met Clara at a party through a friend, and we immediately clicked. Coming from a religious background, having kids outside of marriage was frowned upon. But when we discovered she was pregnant in our final year, we decided to get married right after graduation. Our wedding was a small but joyful ceremony. My parents seemed genuinely happy for us, and at that moment I believed Clara was the love of my life. I had always envisioned a monogamous relationship, one woman to come home to and share my life with. Despite other women showing interest over the years, I never pursued anything because I was genuinely content in my marriage. Clara was my dream girl, and I never wanted to hurt her. However, my dream of a perfect marriage was quickly shattered. I later uncovered 2 incidents of infidelity. The first was an affair with a married coworker that lasted for several years. The second was a brief fling with an ex-boyfriend during a visit to her family. Looking back, I can see how naive I was. I was a quiet, trusting kid who had been raised to be a doormat, and I let things slide that I never should have. Each time I found out, we separated for a while, but I chose to forgive my wife. I didn't want to raise our child in a broken home, and I genuinely believed we could overcome these obstacles. The affair with her coworker happened when we were young, and I convinced myself it was a youthful mistake. We worked on things for a while, and for a period, things seemed to get better. I did my best to set aside my doubts, knowing that if I chose to forgive, I had to genuinely work toward a fresh start. It had been about 4 years since her second betrayal, and I felt confident in my decision to give her another chance. Clara seemed to have changed, and we were genuinely happy, planning our family's future. But my world was about to be shattered once more. 3 months ago, She revealed that she had been having a long-term affair and suggested that our son might not be mine. Her words struck me like a ton of bricks. A mix of shock, betrayal, and disbelief overwhelmed me. In a daze, I managed to ask why she had kept such a significant secret and how she could do something so devastating. Her reaction was cold and indifferent, as if she were completely detached from the pain she was causing. Her vague responses left me with more questions than answers. It was a surreal and painful moment, confronting the shattered trust and uncertainty about my own family. The son I had loved and raised for years might not even be mine, and the betrayal wasn't just with some random man. It was with a ghost from my past, a man I had spent my entire life trying to escape. I continued to press Clara for the truth, because I felt I deserved to know who the father of the child I had been raising since birth really was. Finally, she admitted it. The father was Leo. My eyes widened in shock. I couldn't believe it. I asked her to explain. She told me that she and Leo had become friends when I had first introduced her to my family. She had stayed with us for a while, and Leo, who was usually cold to me, had been warm and polite to her. She wanted to be accepted into my family, so she spent a lot of time with my mom and, in a strange way, with Leo. She noticed the rift between us and questioned me about it. I had opened up to her, explaining our strained relationship. She had started including Leo in our outings, hoping it would help us bond. She told me that one day Leo had opened up to her about a recent breakup. Feeling vulnerable, he had started a friendship with her. She admitted that he would flirt with her harmlessly when I wasn't around, and eventually things had escalated. The thought of my wife and brother sleeping together made me feel sick. Clara confessed that she felt guilty and had decided to leave him, but it was already too late. She was pregnant. "I didn't know if the child was yours or Leo's," she said, "and with no way to prove it, I chose to stay with you. I knew you were the more dependable brother." My world felt like it was crashing down. The son I had loved and raised might not even be mine. This was why we got married. I asked Clara why she had stayed with me if she had feelings for my brother. She said she didn't want to be the one to break off the marriage. She saw me as a wonderful father to our son and decided to stay. In her words, she had made a mistake and didn't know when to stop. I told Clara I was glad she had told me the truth, but that I was going to pack up and leave. She started crying, asking for forgiveness, and insisting that if I loved her, I should fight for her. She even used our son as an excuse, saying he shouldn't be raised in a broken home. I reminded her that I might not even be the father, which made her cry even more and accuse me of being cruel. It seemed like she believed nothing could make me want to leave the marriage. I had forgiven her in the past, and she had come to expect it. But this was different. This was beyond acceptable limits. Even if I forgave her, I could never forget that she had slept with my brother. Trust was a major issue, and her words felt hollow. I had no patience left. I calmly packed my clothes while she cried, and then I left. I left her crying on the doorstep and checked in to a motel. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of freedom. My life was shattered, but I was finally free. The next day, I went straight to my parents' house. I revealed everything about Clara's affair with Leo, explaining how they had been secretly sleeping together for years. The shock on their faces was undeniable. True to her nature, my mother initially tried to defend Leo, insisting that her boy could never do such a thing to his own brother. Determined to expose the truth, I asked my parents to remain silent and let me call Leo in front of them. I put him on speakerphone, making him believe it was a private conversation. "Leo," I said, "I know about you and Clara." At first, he vehemently denied it, but when I told him that Clara had confessed everything, he started blaming her, calling her characterless. He even had the audacity to claim it wasn't his fault if women were attracted to him, and that he was the better-looking brother. I just scoffed at his arrogance and thanked him for confirming the truth, knowing our parents had heard everything. Leo's words faltered, and he began to stammer, trying to explain himself and save his image. My mother, still in shock, demanded an explanation from him. He stuttered through a feeble attempt to justify his actions, blaming everyone but himself. I could see my mother, who had once been so protective of her favored son, now felt a mix of disappointment and anger. In that charged moment, I felt a strange sense of vindication. For years I had endured his torment. Now the truth was out and the roles were reversed. It was Leo who stood exposed. My father, usually quiet and reserved, couldn't contain his disappointment. He asked me to pass him the phone and began to speak to Leo. His voice was heavy with disappointment. "Leo, what you've done isn't just a betrayal of your brother, but a betrayal of this family. You slept with your brother's wife and continued the affair even after they were married. Your actions have severe consequences." Dad continued, his voice firm. "I raised both of you to value family loyalty and decency. What you've shown today defies everything I've tried to teach you. Your disregard for your brother's feelings and the lack of respect for his marriage are unacceptable." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "From today, you're cut off from the college funds I set up for you. You'll have to figure out how to pay your university fees on your own. I will also stop funding your lifestyle. Do you think it makes you more of a man to sleep with married women? Let's see how you manage without my money." I watched my mother as she listened, her face pale. Despite Leo's protests, my father firmly ended the call, shutting down Leo's attempts to explain away his actions. My mom approached me and hugged me. It had been a long time since we shared such a moment, but in that embrace there was an unspoken understanding and support. She apologized for not believing me all this time. My younger self could never have imagined this moment, being vindicated and embraced by my mother. This was a turning point not just for my life, but for my entire family. Following that painful meeting, my dad helped me find a good lawyer to divorce Clara. She and her lawyer tried to fight dirty, asking for alimony since I earned more than her. But with the affair playing heavily in my favor, it wasn't a long battle. Still, the most difficult part was yet to come. We had to do a paternity test. It was confirmed that Leo was indeed the father of the child. The news was incredibly painful, even worse than discovering Clara's infidelity. I was furious that the son I had loved and raised for years wasn't mine. I had spent countless hours playing with him, teaching him, and watching him grow. He was my boy. And now, in a single moment, he was gone. I decided I couldn't bear to see him anymore. He reminded me too much of Leo, and I just couldn't deal with the constant reminder of the betrayal. Clara begged me to continue visiting him, arguing he shouldn't be punished for the situation. But I couldn't I couldn't pretend. I needed space. After my divorce was finalized, I felt a strange sense of freedom wash over me as I moved into my own bachelor pad. It felt surreal to live alone, since I had married so young and never really had the chance to experience true independence. However, my naturally independent nature allowed me to quickly adapt to my new lifestyle, and I started to enjoy it. A few weeks later, my dad called. "I'm changing my will," he said, his voice grim. He told me he was cutting Leo out of his life for good. He had worked hard his entire life, and his assets, including his retirement fund and life insurance, totaled almost $2.5 million. He told me he planned to leave everything to me, ensuring Leo wouldn't be able to contest it later. He would leave Leo only $1. My eyes widened in shock. I never expected this. I told him he didn't have to do that, but he was incredibly stubborn. Once he had decided to cut Leo out, he stuck to it. He said he had already endured the loss of a son, and he wasn't about to let that son ruin what was left of our family. The only condition in his will was that if he passed away before my mom, she could continue living in their house, even though ownership would transfer to me. I didn't mind this. I still wanted to care for my mom in her final days. The call was a mix of profound sadness for my family and a strange sense of vindication. Leo, who had always had everything, now had nothing. I had been given a new beginning, a chance to rebuild my life from the ground up, all because of his ultimate act of betrayal. Somehow, Leo found out about the will. Unable to reach our parents, he called me yesterday, trying to make amends. His voice was different, not arrogant, but broken. He explained how he was struggling with college and that Clara had been pestering him for child support. He said he had no money and couldn't find a job. He begged me to talk to our family, to start fresh because he really needed my help. I just laughed in his face. It was a bitter, hollow sound. "You want me to help you?" I said. "You want me to talk to our family? You should have thought about the consequences before sleeping with my wife and getting her pregnant." Leo tried to argue, saying I was being unfair and that Clara was also to blame. I agreed. "I divorced her," I said, "making her your responsibility now. You shouldn't be calling me to complain about her or the child, because these are the consequences of your own actions." Leo started to raise his voice, but I interrupted him, reminding him that he was no longer the golden child, but the black sheep who had slept with his own brother's wife. At that moment, Leo began to cry. I had never heard him cry, not since we were kids. He told me how everyone, including our grandparents and relatives, had turned against him. While it was true, it was no longer my concern. "We are done," I said. "You should never call me again. I no longer consider you my brother." I hung up the phone and sat in silence, replaying the conversation in my mind. Despite my hatred for my brother, I won't lie, it did hurt me a bit to hear him so helpless. I guess that's the tragedy of family. Even after all the pain, there's a part of you that still feels something for them. It's been 5 months since my last update. My relationship with my father has improved more than I could have ever imagined. We go golfing every weekend now, and he treats me more like a friend than a son. He still reminds me that if my mom ever talks to Leo again, she'll have to leave, and that he's changed his will to leave Leo only $1. My mom, despite missing Leo, has stayed away from him. It must be hardest for her, but she's finally learning from her mistakes. The last I heard about Leo was from my cousin. He said Leo had been asking everyone for money and eventually had to drop out of college. He and Clara are living together, and he has a part-time job as a mechanic. Apparently, they are raising their son together, which is a good thing, I guess. I never discuss Leo with my parents, and they don't bring him up either. For everyone asking, I'm doing quite well. I was promoted at my job 2 months ago, so my salary has significantly improved. I haven't been dating anyone, as I feel I still need time and space to heal. I've been going to therapy, so we'll see how that works out. My journey didn't end with revenge. It ended with a fresh start, and for that, I'm grateful.